What's up, boys? Welcome to another episode of Terran School. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys something very important, how to defend a DT drop opener. Something I get a lot of complaints about. I'm sure all of you have lost to DTs at least a few times. But I'm convinced that I have a pretty good standard hold, something you can do every game, so I really wanted to share it with you guys. I'm also going to be uploading another video after this, which is going to be an early build to counter it, basically. If you don't feel like bothering with defending DTs, you can use that build to counter it. But this game is just going to be a safe, solid counter to it, something that you can do every game. So yeah, before I get into the build, I just want to tell you guys that I've opened a new second YouTube channel called uThermal Clips for like funny highlights, clips and stuff. I'll post the first link in the description. And yeah, I would really appreciate if you guys would check it out, drop a sub, watch some of the videos, enjoy the clips, of course. And yeah, for now, let's get into the video. So in this game, I'm just going to play super standard. I'm going to open barracks into gas 1616. It's just going to be a Reaper expand, nothing crazy. In this video, I'm also going to be answering a lot of common questions you guys have. For example, one I get very often is, how do you know it's blink and not DT drop or the other way around, stuff like that. And I'm going to explain all of those things, no worries. So this game, I'm actually going to play without SCV Scout. I'm going to play a very... it's still a safe version of the Reaper Expand, don't get me wrong. It's just a slightly different one. Instead of SCV Scouting, I'm going to choose to just scout around with the Reaper. You know, scout here for a proxy Stargate, for a proxy gate, stuff like that. I actually think this version, even though it sounds greedy, is not necessarily more greedy. And the reason for that is that if you scout your opponent's base, you will see that they have no nexus, and you know for sure that they're doing something crazy. But you're not necessarily gonna know what proxy they're going for, right? If you scout around your base with the Reaper, you might not know what he has at home, but if there's a proxy around your base, you're gonna know where it is and what it is instantly. So, in my opinion, it's not more greedy, it's just a slightly different version. And also, I think playing a blind safe build is also something that could be pretty nice for slightly lower level players, and with that I mean just not pros pretty much. I'm not talking about just bronze players, but just not pros. Is that sometimes you can mind game yourself by scouting the opponent, because a lot of people tend to do their builds wrong just because they're not at the top level yet. And if you scout and have like all these perfect timings in your head, you can actually end up mind gaming yourself a little bit. So I think this version might even be better for the latter. Though of course you should choose the version you prefer. One thing that I do have to say is that if you play the no SCV scout style, you do have to make a second Marine before the reactor. And the reason for that is that because you're not SCV scouting your opponent, you won't see it coming if they go for a really fast adept. For example, 13 gate, low ground gateway, Corona boost. You won't see it coming, and one Reaper and one Marine is simply not enough. So you have to add one more Marine before the reactor. It's gonna delay the reactor a little bit, but to be honest, if you're safe, yeah, it doesn't really matter too much, right? Also, you guys probably remember this, but I always get my second bunker before the second gas. Or my first bunker for the second gas, sorry. Just to be safe. And with most builds, you don't really need the second gas that fast anyway, to be honest. Now, I'm going to go with a Hellion here. You could actually go for 2 Widow Mines. I'm going to do a Widow Mine drop into Raven. But yeah, sometimes I just prefer to get one Hellion out for the free scouting. It's a really easy, fast scouting tool. The only time I wouldn't really make this is against Stargate. Like if your opponent has Oracles, Phoenixes, I definitely don't think you would want to bother making a Hellion. But yeah. And here you can see the first blocks. This is a very important timing as well, where you're going to start with the DT drop defense already. Most people think defending DTs is just about having detection, but it's actually not. And the reason for that is that even if you have one Raven, for example, you're still not going to be able to have your Raven in both your Bay base and your natural at the same time. And another thing is if you make an eBay to defend the DT drop, it actually costs you a lot for the build order. Like one thing that people usually don't get about DT drop is that it's not that much of an investment. Very often, you will hear people be like, well, I defended DT drop, but I was still behind. Like, that's crazy. But the reason is it's just not that big of an investment. It has some downsides that I'm going to explain later. But they're still going to have a third base and all that. So if you go for a Raven, you go for an eBay and turrets, you're just not putting yourself in a good spot. You might hold off the DTs, but you're not putting yourself in a good spot. So here I'm scouting with both the Reaper and the Hellion. Obviously I'm getting a perfect scout. Now this wall-off is the reason why does not really matter that I scouted or not. That's what I was talking about with how do you know if it's blink or DTs. If you have the wall off, you only have your main to worry about. So you can put all the other units in the main. And it doesn't matter if you know if it's blink or DTs or not, because your build is automatically good against DTs. So just to be precise, the build order is one Hellion, one Hellion, one Widowmine is what I did here. Then you get the Tech Lab. Once again, guys, I always put the replay in the description, so if you really want to look at the build slowly, check out the description, please. Just download it from there. Take it at your own pace. But yeah, I go one Hellion, one Mine, and then I make the Tech Lab for my starport, and then lift it to make another Tech Lab for here. And then roughly at the time this Tech Lab is done, you can add 2 more barracks and go for the 3-rack setup. Now, I think most of you should be pretty familiar with this build order. Like, this is very standard stuff. If you're not, I definitely recommend that you learn it because it's very good. Now, this is usually what your wall wants to look like. You can wall it with 2 depots too, but honestly, you need an eBay at this timing anyway. And on some maps, you might not be able to wall with a depot, bunker, depot, depot. So then you need the eBay anyway. But this is pretty much the ideal wall. DT drop should usually hit at around 440. I think they can actually hit a little bit faster. Like, it's actually possible for them to hit it like 430 if they do like an extreme version. So you have to be cautious about that. Now, this is what your setup wants to look like against DTs. And I'm actually going to teach you guys. This is a very important timing, by the way, 430. Check it out. If you're sure it's DTs, which I am because I scouted at this game, this is just the setup you want. You want all your Marines around the edge here to deny the prism. And all you want here is a bunker, depots, and eBay. Now, you think there's still no detection here, so what does it matter? Well, the thing is with a wall, if they attack the wall, you can just repair it and you can reactively make a turret behind it, and that's it. A DT will not be able to walk in here. The only threat right now is the main. So you want to put all your units there. Raven is going to finish as well here, and tank. And then this here is a very important scout. If you see it's a third base, you already know that it's not 4-gate blink, because 4-gate blink is on 2 base. If this medevac does not scout a third base, it means there's a decent chance of 4-gate blink. So you have to add another bunker here. And if you want to be really safe, you have to add another bunker here as well. But since this is the third base, this could either be a normal blink, in which case they won't attack you for the most part, or it's a DT drop, right? Because as I said, DT drop is a pretty economic opener if you look at it. Now here this wall is going to finish, and you can already see why I say that you can do this every game. Because no matter what build you do, you can wall off at the front. And yeah, this is just something people are not used to doing against Protoss. But if you lose against DTs a lot, if you play against DT drop a lot, this is just a crucial move. Like, it makes it so simple to defend it. I don't know why I discovered it so late, to be honest, but I've been getting a lot of good wins against DTs. One thing I would recommend you still, by the way, guys, is that you actually save a scan. Like here, I didn't save a scan. I mean, I'm looking at the little command card, but the energy here is bugged because it says it has the same. But I would recommend saving at least 1 scan because, you know, the DTs could catch you off guard. They can hit a bit earlier. So even if you do this build until you have the Raven, I would definitely recommend that you save at least 1 scan. I was being a little bit greedy here, perhaps, by not saving one. Alright, so now I want to... Well, first I'm going to defend the DT. I have to say, this is a very late DT drop, by the way. I think because I scouted it, my opponent decided to not commit as much, which is logical. And you see, this is usually what it looks like. This prism would normally carry 2 DTs in it. And then 1 DT would be at the front, right? Now, obviously, I would be able to take care of it with these units. And then, yeah, this one at the front, it just can't do anything. There's a wall off. You don't have to worry about it. You can see you don't even need detection. And it's as simple as that. And that's the DT drop thwarted. Now, one thing I do have to add as well is that if you make 1 siege tank, you actually do have to place it here. Because I'm sure a lot of you guys were thinking, well, if I make a wall up there, just kill it with stalkers. That's where the siege tank comes into play. You want to put the siege tank at a location that, you know, it basically covers your buildings for the most part. And that's also the reason why making a second bunker would be nice if you play against 4-gate blink, because otherwise they could just blink on the tank and it could be a bit of a disaster, right? Now, talking about the weaknesses of the DT drop. Economically, DT drop is a good build, but they're going to be behind on some things. The most important thing, in my opinion, is that they usually do not have blink. If they play Twilight, they will always be able to kill your drops with blink. But Stalkers without blink are just not very effective at it. Most of the time you can even boost over them without really being worried too much. So personally, I think a really good follow-up to counter the DTs is just to go for a double drop, or maybe even more drops into the macro game. I think if you push at the front, looking at it logically, pushing at the front is not actually that strong against DT drop. And the reason for that is that usually the follow-up to the drop is Colossus, and they already have the Dark Shrine, which means Archons. So by the time you counter push against DTs, you are pretty much playing against their strengths. They're gonna have Charge, Archons, and Colossus, which honestly, there's nothing more you want against an early 3-rack push at like 7 or 8 minutes, right? So even if you defended the DT drop, if you're going for a frontal counterattack, you are pretty much playing into their strengths. Like as you can see here, normally at this time, Protoss would probably have both Charge and Blink. Now after this DT drop, he has neither. Charge is like 70% done, there's no Blink in sight. You can see the economy is looking very good, just like I said, but there's no Blink. In this case, there's not even a Robo Bay. Normally I do expect them to go for that Robo Bay. This game he didn't. In any case, it would be a little bit later. But so my preferred counter is just to go for a simple drop. Pretty much like in my last big macro TVP video, this a solid as steel TVP video. Go for a double drop, do a push at the front, and it's going to be really hard for him to defend. And that goes even more against DT drop. Now this game I went for 5 racks. This is actually a map specific thing, by the way. 5 racks, it's good on open maps where they, the bases are hard to take. Usually not a huge fan of 5 racks, but on a map like this, on a map like Beckett, stuff like that, it's actually a good choice. Now this is exactly what I'm talking about. Look, normally, insanely risky, right? Against DT drop, when there's no blink, not so much. You can just get in there pretty easily. Obviously, I'm not saying you should YOLO over Stalkers in any case, but in this case against DT drop, when it's very unlikely for that to be blink, this is actually a good move. Now the Raven, the reason why I like Raven so much is not even to defend DT drop. It's really good against the follow-up of DT drop as well. Because like I said, an army of a Protoss after a DT drop is most likely going to be Zealots, Archon, and Colossus. Raven is good against all of those. Disabling Colossus, disabling Archons is really good. Anti-armor missile and Zealots is insane. Yeah, I feel like this setup I have this game is just perfect to play against DT drop. And just like if you go against Blink, it has options as well, just like I said. And if you do this version, the most important part for me is, like I explained, is that you do not have to worry, like, is it actually DTs, is it Blink? Because a lot of times I would see people go for, they make turrets and they make a Raven and then they realize it was just Blink. Or even worse, the Protoss cancel the DT Shrine and you're sitting there making turrets and a Raven and stuff like that, right? And it's just way better to have a middle of the road build that kind of deals with both. And since I never really see anyone deal with DT drop this way, I remember Sol came to me, Spirit, another pro Terran. He was like, "How do you counter DT drop? Like, I don't get it." And I showed him this, and he was like, "Man, it's so easy if you play like that." And it's true. It's very simple, but it's true. You do a solid build, you know where to position your units, and most importantly, you wall off, and you're gonna be good against DT drop for the most part. Now, obviously, you're still gonna have to play a macro game after that. Like, you're never gonna be massively ahead. But yeah, this if you get this setup right, I think you guys are going to do fantastic, honestly. And yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. Like I said, the next video, I'm going to upload another build, a fast attacking build that kills DT drop early. So if you don't feel like defending the Ts, if you're just annoyed by Protoss players, make sure to check out that next video as well. But for now, thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Adios.